Before we begin, I would like to thank all of you for taking your time to join us in this exciting event. For those of you who have just taken your O-levels, we would also like to wish you all the best for your upcoming results next week. Just a disclaimer for this event, the content and opinions expressed in their presentation represents only the view of the presenter and does not represent those of his or her employer or affiliated organizations. This session will be recorded for reference and publicity purposes. Please notify the speakers if you have any concerns or wish to be exempted.
Here are some housekeeping matters before we begin our event. Do turn on your cameras to join in the fun, but please ensure your microphones are muted. Should you have any questions at any point in time, do scan the QR code as seen on the screen to pose your questions. The link will also be sent to the chat. Without further ado, let's get started with the event. For the first part of the event, we have two speakers to share more about their experiences in the psychology scene here in Singapore. I'm sure all of us are so excited to hear from them. Let us welcome our first speaker, Ms. Gwyneth Tong. Over to you, Gwyneth.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am so glad to have you here today. My name is Gwyneth Tong, and I'm the president of the Singapore Psychological Society Youth Wing. So I'll be the first speaker, and I'm currently studying for my master's degree at NTU doing psychology. I recently finished my undergraduate degree at NTU, and I came from Ngee Polytechnic when the Diploma of Psychology was still around. So my favorite subjects are social and cultural psychology, which I'm writing my thesis on currently. And later on, feel free to ask me anything. And I am looking forward to give the presentation to you today. Katie, over to you, our other speaker.
Hi. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Kai Ting. I'm currently the vice president for Singapore Psychological Youth Wing. So I am currently a year 4 psychology student at NUS. I will be sharing more about the educational pathways to get into a career in psychology later, and also a little bit about what is it actually like studying psychology. You can look at my relevant experiences on the screen if you want to, and feel free to ask me any questions later on. Yeah, so back to you, Gwen.
All right. Okay, so before we jump straight into the program, let us introduce the SPS Youth Wing. So the SPS Youth Wing, which stands for the Singapore Psychological Society Youth Wing, is a special branch of the Singapore Psychological Society, which was founded in 1979 and aims to advance psychology as a science and a profession in Singapore. So as for us, we are a bit newer. The Youth Wing was established in 2021 with the aim of reaching out to youths like you who are choosing to pursue psychology or applying it in their fields of work. So we have 3 main goals. So we want to connect with you, bridge connections between the society and you guys, as well as practitioners. So we hope to broaden understanding of prospective careers and opportunities within the local psychology scene. And finally, we hope to apply psychological knowledge to benefit well-being. Yep. So as the field of psychology continues to grow in relevance, we hope to enhance your knowledge and applications of psychology to everyday life. So yeah, follow us at linktree.ee/SPS Youth Wing. Put that in the chat. Yeah, okay. To stay updated for more events and opportunities with us. Okay, so with that, let's go into the content of slides today. We'll have about 4 or 5 sections. So first, I will introduce to you what psychology is about and give you some examples of careers and job opportunities. Then Katie, Kai Ting will take over and she'll share more about the educational pathways to psych in Singapore, as well as some realities of studying psychology. Then we'll have an event before we have our Q&A session where you can ask us anything, as in the tinyURL link. And stay tuned for our game activities. Okay, so just like a class demonstration, let's begin with a fun video. So let's test your awareness by figuring out who did it in this video.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
Action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
Yep. So how many of the changes do you guys notice? Because when I watched the video for the first time, I noticed zero. I was just trying to figure out who killed Lord Smith, and I still don't know. Okay, so yeah, actually this video is a great example of what you call selective attention. So when you focus on one aspect of a situation, your brain will actually ignore other background activities in the environment. Because as we learn in psychology, attention is a limited resource. I guess some of us kind of already know that, but psychology will give you like a more scientific basis to it. So we may not realize it, but psychology concepts are everywhere in our daily life, and we actually take a lot of those things for granted. So trivia, this is also why multitasking is not a good idea. So I hope everyone is fully paying attention to this set of slides and us right now, and not looking at your phone or doing something else, because we can only focus on one thing at one time, and switching our focuses rapidly between two activities actually does more harm than good. All right, next slide. Okay, so now the question is, since we have gone into an example of what psychology is, so what exactly is psychology in terms of definitions? So psychology is the study of the human mind and behavior, as Wikipedia will tell you. But of course, there's a lot more to it. So here are some examples of the concepts covered. So first, we study mental processes, behaviors, and emotions. So for example, one particular field is actually the study of personality, right? As you guys might probably know personality tests like other than BuzzFeed, you might know like MBTI. So that's the 16 personality test. So a lot of people have in their bios, or they describe themselves that, oh, I am an ENTP, I am an INTJ, etc. So here's a fun fact that might surprise you. So the MBTI is actually not very accurate or valid as a personality test. So if you read research papers, they will actually tell you that it's generally not very accurate across time, and also it's not particularly reliable. So a more scientifically proven test that you might want to find out more about is actually called the 5-factor personality test, or the acronym is OCEAN. So you can Google OCEAN personality test or 5-factor personality test. So you might find that it describes you better, and you can Google it if you want to learn more about yourself. So in psychology, we also study the brain and how it's connected to the rest of the body. So you will learn about how cells in the brain work, which are neurons, what chemicals they carry, and how they change our mood and our behavior. And finally, because humans are a social species, we are influenced by our environment. So for example, when we are put in groups together, we behave differently. And research has also found that people in different cultures differ from each other in multiple ways, even down to the way that they process information. So here are some examples of, Here are some examples of some fields in psychology. So first one is abnormal psychology, which is a popular subdiscipline. So it deals with things like mental disorders. So when we talk about psychology, there is usually a link between psychology and mental health. And there is a misconception among the public that psychology deals exclusively with mental health, but that's not true. There's a lot more other fields in psychology to talk about. So another example is cognitive psychology, which deals with things that we saw in the video earlier, which is like attention and processing of information in the brain. Social psychology, which is my favorite, studies how the presence of others influences our thoughts and behavior. So we act differently in groups and when we are alone. And for example, when you work in teams, your behavior also changes. Developmental psychology looks at how people differ across ages. So you study like how children differ in their thoughts, in the way they process information, how perhaps cognitive decline happens over time, why adolescents are more impulsive and make not so good decisions sometimes. Okay, so one interesting elective, like a special branch, is positive psychology. So it studies concepts that actually promote optimal human functioning, such as motivation and happiness. So you could say it's almost the opposite of abnormal psychology. And there's so much more. So in short, there's a lot to explore in psychology, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Usually education in psychology will give you an introduction to all of these different modules and more. All right, so here are some examples of practicing psychologists in specific fields. So of course, usually when people come into psychology, when we talk about psychology, the first career that often comes to mind is a clinical psychologist. So what do they do exactly? So clinical psychologists, broadly, they are trained to diagnose and treat individuals with mental health issues. So let's also establish that they cannot prescribe medications. In Singapore and in many parts of the world, the only profession that can prescribe medication for mental health disorders is a psychiatrist, which is a doctor. So medical doctors that specialize in psychiatry. For clinical psychologists, what they do is that they apply research-based methods to tailor effective treatment programs for clients. So if you're on the mental health scene, you might actually see like advertisements where some apps claim to teach you CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So that's one form of therapy that clinical psychologists may use as they work out a program for their clients. So another popular one might be organizational psychologists. So as organizational psychologists, they deal with employee management and work performance. So concepts like how to improve motivation, selecting the right employees, maximizing productivity, and building the right environment for the workplace. So these are all things that an organizational psychologist would look at. And they also work closely with management to plan policies and build what you call a strong organizational culture. So yeah, research is also very important in this because you need to conduct studies in the workplace. You may need to interview employees to find out what works for them. Yeah, and you need to make decisions that are supported by management. All right, finally, the third one that we're talking about is forensic psychologists. So forensic psychologists work side by side with the concepts of criminal justice and law. So for example, they may conduct research on what factors in individuals and societies can predict crime, or work with data to implement effective policies for deterrence, for example. And they may also be involved as consultants during the investigation process. Yeah, having a specialization in forensics can actually bring you to a lot of different places also. So you may work in law, you may work in justice, law, justice, and also you may even end up as someone supporting victims, for example. So here are some non-exhaustive list of job opportunities. Yeah, so you can just take a look, and these are just 3 of the many different areas you can go into. So for clinical and health side alone, you have a psychotherapist, you have a counselor, can be a health psychologist. So one of my friends who is doing his PhD right now, he's actually studying to be like a health psychologist, and his specific specialization, at least based on the papers that he writes, is how he works with, I think it's called orthodontics. I'm not very sure, but when people are injured, their legs are injured, they have to wear like certain shoes with certain soles. So his research actually looked at what factors influence adherence to wearing these shoes for recovery. Are there certain personalities that prefer to wear it, or like are there some that are more likely to not wear it? So yeah, that's one example. And yeah, there are all sorts of things that you can go into. There's art, music, movement therapists. So did you know that there is this thing called equine therapy? So it's horse therapy. Yeah, you work with horses to make you feel better because animals are very calming and soothing. Yeah, you can also become a social worker because social work and psychology, they are very much overlapping in what they study. Like you learn a lot of basic skills like how to interview people, how to you learn skills like empathy, but of course they have different aims. So in the education and research sector, you can become an educational psychologist and in turn become an educator, though they're slightly different. You can become a teacher, a lecturer, a researcher. Researchers tend to have academic appointments where they teach in higher tertiary settings. You may also become like a behavioral therapist. So this is one very interesting one. You're not really a psychotherapist, but you work with children, for example, to modify their behavior using scientifically backed principles. So like punishment and reinforcement. Okay, so other areas we have talked about a bit. Okay, here's a very interesting one. There's something called defense psychology. So we actually have defense psychologists in Singapore. So I went to Google online. So the role of a defense psychologist is typically in a ministry where defense is typically in a ministry, yeah, where military or army is involved. So one of the defense psychologists' role is to assist in the development and implementation of psychological defense capabilities in the Singapore Armed Forces and provide psychological support along a peace to war continuum. Wow. Lots of applications of psychology, as you can see. And sports and performance psychologists, finally, are people who work with athletes to motivate them and train them to be at their best performance. So yeah, in short, there's a lot of things. So all right, so yeah, employment opportunities. So okay, these over here are all the ministries in Singapore. Of course, there's a lot of other places like clinics and private organizations that you can work at with a psychology degree. But the government is a popular one that you can start with. So some of my personal experiences. So I interned at the Ministry of Home Affairs under the Home Team of a long time ago. So yeah, Ministry of Home Affairs. So it's this one and I worked at their psychological department, which is called the Home Team Behavioral Sciences Center. Yeah, that's right. So what I did there was I wrote a research paper on intergroup relations. So like how Singaporeans are receptive to different groups of people. And so yeah, it has something to do with protecting the nation. And I also recently interned at the Immigrations and Checkpoints Authority, so ICA, the guys who chop your passports, but of course who do a lot more. So what I did there was I again wrote another research paper. I studied about what factors influence team performance. So when you're in a group with people, what happens? And what are the ways that you can work together better? So yeah, and there's MOE. There's other places like MOE, where you can become an educational psychologist to become a consultant, or you can work with them as a teacher. All right, thank you for listening to me so far. That's about it from me. So I will now hand the time over to Kai Ting, who will tell you more about educational pathways.
All right. Thank you so much, Gunnar, for your interesting sharing. Before I continue, just a reminder to everyone here listening, if you have any questions so far or later on, feel free to ask your questions via the tiny URL link in the chat, okay? And then we will answer them later on. Okay, thanks for sharing the link. Okay, so so once again, thank you, Gwen, for sharing. And if what she has shared interests you, you may want to listen closely to the next part where I will share about the educational pathways that you will need to get in a career in psychology. Okay, so I know that most of you here are secondary school students and you guys are in the early stages of your education. Okay, so I'm very grateful that all of you are here to learn more about what psychology exactly is. When I was your age, I sound very old right now, not that old, but I only had a very big idea of what I wanted to do in my life. So I hope that today, right, you will have a much clearer picture of what psychology is all about and how you can work towards this goal if this interests you. Yeah, okay, we can go on to the next slide. All right, so almost all students will go through O and N levels, and that's where you guys are at right now. Yeah, and so to get into this career in psychology, this is the pathway that we are all looking at. So after O or N levels, typically people will go into diplomas that are related to psychology, or you can go into junior college and take A levels or the IB program. There are also certificates that people can do that's relating to psychology that may help you to get a job in psychology related field. Yeah, so okay, give me a second. Yeah, so if you are interested in becoming a psychologist, right? Just now Gwyneth mentioned a few, like clinical psychology, educational psychology, organizational psychology, forensic psychology. Then we are looking downwards in the chart. So after diploma, A levels, and the certificate, we are looking at getting a bachelor's degree in psychology. So this can be done both locally and overseas. So this is a bachelor's degree, but having done a bachelor's degree doesn't make you a psychologist. What more do you need to do? You have to move on and pursue a postgraduate degree in psychology, and that would be a master's or a PhD. Yeah, master's degree or PhD. Yeah, so only after that you can be considered an actual psychologist. Yeah. Okay, so the certificate wise, there are different certificates out there, some relating to autism studies, certificate of counseling. So that's a bit different from our typical diploma and levels. Okay, so now that I've shared briefly on how the pathway looks like to enter this field of psychology, I will now share a bit about the courses that are available both locally, both in polytechnics and university. Okay. So just to briefly bring you through, here are the courses that are offered in our polytechnic. So you see Temasek, Mian, Singapore Poly, and Public Poly. So the diploma in psychology studies by Temasek Poly has the most focus in psychology, whereas the Mian one is more focused on community development. And for the Singapore Poly and the Republic Poly ones, they are more focused on human resource. However, having said that, as long as you do well enough, you can still get into a degree program later on in university. So on the right column, you will see the entry requirements that are needed for these courses. So if you want to, you can take a screenshot of this for your reference. If you want to take this as a goal for you for your O or N levels. Yeah. So I'll give a quick minute for you to take a screenshot if you need to. Yeah, you can take a photo also, that's fine. All right. Okay, I guess that's good. We can move on to our university programs. Okay, so on this screen, you'll see that the University of Buffalo, Murdoch, NUS, NTU offers programs in psychology courses as well. If you want to, you can again take a screenshot. Okay, so a few more moments. All right. Okay, we can move on. There's Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, so SMU, Singapore Management University, SUSS, James Cook, MDIS, they also offer programs that are related to psychology as well. Okay. So same thing, if you want to, you can take a picture. Right. Okay, so now that I've shared about the psychology courses, both in polytechnics and universities, right? You may be wondering, what is that all that I can do to get into the psychology field? Of course, as I've shared earlier in the flow chart, there are other ways to work in this field as well. So this includes going via the junior college to university route, which is the one that I took, and I think choosing to go into a junior college later on has allowed me to have a bit more time to think about exactly what kind of field I want to go into. Yeah. So I think at this stage in life, you guys are in secondary school, right? Maybe you guys are still figuring out what you guys prefer, but maybe some of you already know that psychology is something that you are really, really interested in. So maybe a more direct route, since you already know what you like, it would be the diploma route. But for those who are still unsure, maybe you can still take some time. If that's what you need, you can enter a JC and then decide later on before you choose a course in uni. Yeah. Okay. And then, oh yeah, one very important thing is that just now I remember that I shared a bit about the academic grades that you need to enter these local tertiary institutions, right? Don't be disheartened. Academic grades don't meet the entry requirements because there are other courses available out there, such as overseas programs and alternative courses and diplomas that you can do. There are many more opportunities for you to volunteer your time to build experience in this field. Okay, so one such example is to join psychology societies like us, Singapore Psychological Society, for more exposure and network opportunities. So myself and everyone here in the team, we get to work on exciting events like this, where we can network with like-minded individuals and professionals even. Yeah, and this helps to expand your insight in this field. Lastly, you can also volunteer or work in psychology-related settings. So some examples of volunteer work that I've done and initiatives, right, would be I once did this journaling project with the Institute of Mental Health, IMH, where we basically designed and researched and packed journaling kits with journaling prompts to actually help the clients who are staying in, to guide them through reflections and to help them learn a bit more about themselves. Yeah, and another notable event that I've done and volunteered in is this thing called the Mental Health Fest. There's an initiative done in NUS itself, where I managed with my friend. We invited some mental health related organizations to come into our Zoom session to have conversations relating to this topic. And of course, there were fun activities as well. One very fun one that I remember is that the Samaritans of Singapore, they had a VR simulation on suicide, and that's pretty cool, I thought. So these are some of the things that you can come up with or join various organizations, yeah, just to gain more exposure this field. Yeah. Okay, so that's about it for the avenues that you can get into in order to pursue psychology. Okay, maybe you can move on to the next slide, where I will actually share about what is it actually like studying psychology. Okay, so a few things here. I think number one, it is true that it's quite challenging to enter a local psychology program. I remember before I entered university, I went to one of the open houses, and I saw that, I remember seeing that there were like an overflow of students wanting to enter this introduction to psychology program. And that really shows that actually this course is quite popular, and there are certain requirements that you need before you can enter the psychology program in the university. Okay, so in NUS itself, where I'm from, you have to fulfill certain requirements before you can even choose this as a major. But in others, someone talking. In other universities, there are certain scores that you need to hit before you can enter. right? So, but you can of course set this as a goal. Like if this is really something you want to go into, that can be a goal that you want to hit towards. Okay. Secondly, okay, yes, it involves a lot of reading and writing. So in the course, you get to read a lot of research papers to learn about how and what researchers have found about human behavior. Okay, you'll also be writing a lot after reading all those things, right? To generate your own perspective towards the topic. Yeah. Okay, so that's what you may expect if you were to study psychology. Okay, third point is, yes, you need to be decent in math because statistics is a key part of psychology. So personally, I didn't really enjoy math that much in secondary school or JC, but I think having a foundation really helps in statistics because I think I've seen some similarities between what we've learned before and also what is taught in university. And this is a very useful tool for us to figure out how to deal with data when the data is collected in experiments that we will get to do when we are doing the psychology course. Okay, and after that, okay, I think as mentioned earlier, if you want to become a psychologist, right, you have to further your education after getting a bachelor's degree or a diploma in order to practice. Okay, so that's a very common misconception that many people may have, like, oh, I do a bachelor's degree in psychology and then, oh, I can become a psychologist. Not so. You have to further your studies after that, get a master's or do a PhD, and then you can be called like a psychologist. And yes, master's and doctorate programs, PhD programs, they have very limited space like in Singapore. So it's very important that you have a plan to work towards this goal, if that's what you want your career to be in the future. But yeah, personally, I think after saying all this, it sounds a bit daunting, right? Like, wow, it's quite hard. But I think I found this course to be nothing short of fascinating and interesting to learn about. I think every single module that I had, I really enjoyed. And I believe you will get to learn a bit about some of these concepts that we learn in psychology later during the games. So look forward to that. So if psychology is something that interests you, I really encourage you to go and find out a bit more about it. It could be through our social media. It could be, just a quick Google search. And you can find a lot more information about this. Okay. Now, next slide. All right. So, wow. I did a bit, but okay. So it sounds so difficult. Why would I want, why become a psychologist? Why do I want to study psychology in the first place? Okay. Yeah. So why do we want to learn so much about psychology? Okay, because very importantly, studying psychology gives us like unlimited potential because psychology is relevant to so many fields of work. So other than being a psychologist, we actually see psychologists graduates working with many different people from different fields. And you see people working in HR, education, special needs, sports, forensic defense, as what Brennan has mentioned earlier. And even as a psychologist, right, they also get to work with many people from different fields, right? So you can see psychologists working with like doctors, occupational therapists, etc., to support someone who is recovering, for example. Yeah, so there's a lot of potential right there to branch out into different fields, essentially. And second of all, I think this is really important. By studying psychology, you really get to gain both soft skills and hard skills that helps you to thrive in the world today. Okay, so some of the skills, right, is really academic writing and presentation skills, which is really, really important when you want to go into the workforce. You get to hone your critical thinking and analytical skills as well. You learn to communicate and have interpersonal skills. Okay. You also learn how to actively listen to others, etc. So there's a lot to learn within this field. And lastly, of course, there are a lot of more reasons, but just to highlight a few, we get to understand ourselves and others on a deeper level. Okay, with the secrets to human behavior. So I think maybe some of you here may have read some self-help books or psychology related books, like how to set better goals or become happier. So I think studying psychology really helps you to understand yourself better. So personally, I think it has helped me to have a clearer idea of who I am. I have better self-awareness of self-awareness, and then what kind of thought processes I have, which actually helps me to improve myself. So I thought that was a really great thing that I've gained from studying psychology. Yeah, okay, so of course, and one last thing. Okay, yeah, so after studying psychology, you can get into those various roles that Gwyneth has mentioned earlier, and I think this really helps to improve workplaces, depending on what you want to do with your psychology degree. I'm pretty sure that you, as a psychology graduate in the future, can help to benefit like our society in a very, very broad sense. But yeah, okay, so I guess that's about it for what I have to share.
Okay, thank you so much to our
I'll now hand the
speakers for
time
the
back to the host. Yes.
Yeah, thank you speakers for the
Okay.
insightful sharing. I hope that all of you have learned more about the psychology field. Let us give a virtual round of applause to the speakers for their efforts. Yeah, good job. Okay, so in the meantime, if you have any questions for the speakers, do feel free to ask us in the link in the chat below. Now it is time for us to put our knowledge to the test. It is vocab time. Please scan the QR code on the screen and enter the game. Okay, let's start. So psychology, the first question is psychology is a? Wow, it's quite a clear win that psychology is a social science here. 86% of you got it correct. So yeah, psychology is a social science. It deals with the human mind and behavior, bridging the divide between social science and natural science. So good job to these 18 participants.
For the next question, we have performance psychology is often associated with which field of psychology? You have organizational, sports, clinical, and educational. I see a lot of answers coming for sports psychology. Very cool. Very nice, very nice. Let's see the answer. Wow, congratulations to 13 of you. You got the answer correct. So just a little bit of explanation. Are there any sports players out there? Well, I certainly am one. And performance is more closely related to sports. And this is because sports is more high intensity and fast paced, and it requires athletes to play at their best to maximize their chances of winning. Let's move on to the next question.
Yeah, so for question 3, does studying psychology allow you to read people's mind? Wow, this will be a very cool skill, right? Wow, everyone voted for so cannot read people's mind. Yeah, unfortunately, this is true. We cannot read people's mind. We are not Charles Xavier, so we can't do that. But what we can do is to create mental models to effectively integrate people's thoughts and feelings. So that's another cool skill to have. Yeah. Okay, moving on to the next question.
So what is the difference between psychology and psychiatry? Well, I know one similarity is that they both start with P, and one difference is that their spelling is different. Unfortunately, there's no such option, so we have to see what works over here. See that 100% of the responses so far are on option 2. Wow, this is so one-sided. Anyone caring to like debate about the other options? No one? 100%? Okay, 100%. Let's see the answer. Wow, everyone got it correct. That is so impressive. I would have got it wrong if I was taking the test. Anyway, some explanation. Psychiatrists undergo longer training periods to become medical doctors, so they are able to prescribe medication, while psychologists are unable to do so. All right, moving on to the next question.
So for the next question, the current guidelines used by psychologists when writing research papers was developed by. There's some mixed in answers. So the correct answer is American Psychological Association, also known as APA for short. So for more explanation, we use the APA guidelines to write research papers. And in fact, APA style is the most commonly used to cite sources within the social science. So since psychology is a social science, we also use APA.
Okay, next question. We use 10% of our brains. Is this true or false? Wow, it's around half the answers right there. Very interesting. Let's see the answers in a few seconds. Well, the answer is false. I'm not sure if I should be flattered at this response that people say it is true, because this could mean that we are superhumans who barely have to think, or the other way around. But the answer is false, and this is not true. We use way more than 10% of our brains.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Which polytechnic in Singapore does not offer a diploma related to psychology? I think this was mentioned earlier by one of our speakers. So it's quite clear-cut that everyone's choosing Nanyang Poly, with a few responses from Republic Poly. Yeah, and the answer is Nanyang Poly. So do take note that if you wish to apply for a diploma related to psychology, do take note of the available diplomas available. Yeah.
Yeah, just to jump in, Nanyang Poly doesn't have a diploma related to psychology, but I think it has a diploma related to social work. Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Which field of psychology would most be interested in the term modus operandi? So for most of you, it's probably like your first time hearing this word modus operandi. Is it English? Is it like French? Is it Chinese? Even I don't know. That's the truth. I have no idea. But I'm no language expert, but it looks like it sounds like mode of operation. So it seems like everybody puts forensic psychology and social psychology. Let's see the answer. All right, congratulations to 95% of you. The answer is forensic psychology. So modus operandi actually refers to a particular method of doing something. And this term is more commonly used in forensic psych, where it will refer to the method of committing the crime. Moving on to the next question.
So for the next question, psychology mainly deals with mental health. There's a mixed in answers, so between true and false. So mental health is commonly known in the psychology field. So yeah, the answer is false. If you're paying attention to our figure, she actually mentioned that mental health is only one part of psychology. There are also other interesting aspects that you can explore, like special needs education, human resources, or even therapy. Okay, moving on to the final question.
So does having a degree in psychology only limit you to jobs in the psychology field? If you are paying attention to the speakers just now, I'm sure this answer will be a piece of cake for you. Oh, it seems like all 20 of you have put false. And is that all? Right, let's see the answer. Congratulations to all 23 of you. Yeah, having a degree in psychology does not limit you to the psych field, because this degree allows you to better understand oneself and human behavior in others. So one with this degree will be comfortable working in industries dealing with human interaction. A few examples just to name, it will be teachers and like human resource managers. And yeah, congratulations to all of you for getting it correct. And that would be it for the Woo Clap session. We hope that you have managed to learn an interesting thing or two about psych. Don't worry if you didn't get too many questions correct, because this is not an indicative of your abilities in the psych field. I'm sure after all this time, you must have burning questions, be it general questions about psych or directed questions to our earlier speakers. We got you covered. Let's take a look at the first question that we have at hand now, shall we?
So, the first question will be, what were your reasons for studying psychology? I think we can ask Gwyneth about her experience also. Yeah.
So what was the question again? Sorry.
The question is,
question
what were
again?
your
Yes.
reasons for studying psychology?
What was
So you
my
mentioned
reason
that
for
you were
studying
in
psychology?
Ngee Ann Poly also, right? Then you came on to get your further studies in psychology as well. So what were
Right.
your reasons for this?
Like when I was in secondary school, like O levels, right after getting my O levels, that I became convinced that I had to study psychology. So I told myself, oh, I have a burning passion for psychology. I think what really appealed to me about the idea of psychology at the time is that you get to understand people better, which is very broad and generic. But I thought human behavior was very fun and interesting. Yeah, you know, when you're young, you don't really have a lot of information yet. So yeah, I think there's a lot of what we are thinking as we come into this session on Zoom also. So yeah, I thought I think it's okay. I took English literature in secondary school. So like when we read a book, we had to like break down the character of we had to break down the psyche of the main character, basically like understand his motivations. Oh, why is he acting this way when certain events happen to him? So like for the main character in that story, which I'm talking about, the book is called Things Fall Apart. So he's a very proud man, and his society is being colonized. So like he increasingly acts out aggressively against like to the people around him, and then at the end of the novel he basically gives up, and he ends his life basically because he is filled with despair at the state of his society. So like we had to investigate the reasons why, and I found that very interesting. I think it was like a good primer into how psychology would be like. Of course, psychology is a lot more broader than that. So I guess that's more or less my answer. Yeah.
Maybe can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so sorry everyone. There's some issues with my computer, so I cannot switch on my camera. But I will also answer this question. So why did I choose psychology, right? That was the question. Yeah, I think essentially what happened was that ever since primary school and even secondary school, I think I was a person where, you know, a lot of people could, you know, my close friends would come and confide in me. And then that was when I realized that, hey, you know, it seems I wouldn't mind, you know, getting a career in a career that I can help others by listening to them and then guiding them in the future. So that was one of the main motivation factor why I tended towards psychology, because I knew that this was a degree that could, you know, help me to get into this particular career in the future. Yeah, and I was also very interested in how humans behaved. I like to observe what people do and wonder to myself, why do certain people do certain things? So naturally, after A levels, you know, when I was looking through, you know, the type of courses that they are offering in our local universities, this course, psychology, stood out to me the most. And I guess it was one of the only, the only course that I could see myself in. And basically that's why I got into this. Thanks for the question.
I see. So
hope you find your reason too.
So it seems like we have something in common. So we're really interested to find out more about like the human behavior, the human mind, and that's why that was one of the motivators that encouraged us to further pursue psychology in this field. Okay, maybe we can move on to the next question. Okay, so the next question is, is it better to go to poly psych or go to JC first and then do psych in uni?
What an excellent question. Because you have two people right here, one who went to poly and one who went to JC, but both who went to uni, right? So okay, from my perspective, to answer this question, is it better to go to poly or JC first? It depends on where you want to go. Yeah, depends on where you want to go. So it depends on what your end goal is, right? So so to start off with, okay, the reason why I went to poly was because like I was convinced that psychology was the thing that I wanted to do. So I could not wait to get my hands on it. I was like, give it to me now. I cannot wait another 2 or 3 years before going to uni. So yeah, so that's why I went to poly. And I got a great education there because I got to do psychology earlier than everyone else. So like, JC students are studying for their A levels, which is a lot of subjects. And for me, I'm just doing psych all day long with my friends. So so I would say that the reason I went to poly was just to actually acquire the knowledge and give myself a head start when I would study psychology in uni. So I knew that I was going to apply to uni. Yeah, however, I will also say that it is competitive in poly because I think polytechnics in recent years, they're actually more oriented towards preparing students for the workforce. So you have to perform quite well to be offered like specifically like almost a GPA of like 3.5, above 3.5, to be offered a place in psychology at most of the universities. But that's just my personal opinion. Yeah. Okay, so maybe Katie can share more about JCs. But yeah, I think JCs in general, they make it easier to get into university generally. And there may be more overseas opportunities also if you get an A-level certificate, since it's certified by the O-level authority, which is I forgot what they're called. They're called Cambridge. Yeah, yes, Cambridge. So Katie, over to you.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Gwen, for your perspective from the poly side. I guess as mentioned earlier, being in a JC really gives you a bit more time to figure out what exactly you want to do in the future. Yeah, although I must say that even though even if you have gotten like a degree, you can still switch careers in the future lah. But then as a start, being in JC, allowed me to have a bit more time to figure out who I am and like what exactly I want to do. But at the same time, as mentioned by Gwyneth earlier, right, JC's academic rigor is really, really tough. There's a lot of time that is put into the various subjects that we have to take. And then there's a lot of practice and a lot of exams and whatnot. So sometimes some people, at the end of JC, they still are unsure of what they want to do. Yeah, so it really depends. But of course, now that you guys know about this, right, I think I will encourage you all to start thinking, is psychology something that you're interested in, or you want to explore other things before you settle for something in university in the future? So, yeah.
Thank you for your answers. Yeah. I think it has addressed the question very well. Like, if you're, it really depends on whether or not how interested you are in psychology and how eager you are to either have a head start first or like to join at a later period of time through JC. Yeah. So moving on to the next question.
Yes, for the next question, we'd like to hear more about your time in like university. So is getting first class honors important in NTU or NUS, or does the name itself carry enough weight? So speakers, what do you think about this?
Okay, so pragmatically speaking, I think when everybody knows that when you apply for jobs, right? I mean, employers sometimes they use GPA or like your class or your honors as the first cutoff. So like that's like something that you need to, of course, work on. But I will also say that grades are only one side of the picture, of course, right? So what's really important is you demonstrate your aptitude or like your interest for the thing that you are pursuing. So maybe I'll give an example close to home. So like research, doing a master's. So typically people have the misconception that master's, you need like a first class or like a high GPA to get into master's. However, what's really the most important is that you demonstrate research interest. So a strong portfolio would be something like you have worked in research labs with professors before, you have won competitions for writing papers, you have published papers as first author, and you have done a lot of research internships. So someone with those collection of qualities will actually be preferred to someone who doesn't have as much of this research experience. So yeah, the same goes for when you're applying to any job. So if you have demonstrated that you have a history of volunteering opportunities, you have actually worked with a lot of notable people in the field, you'll definitely have a higher chance. You're not limited by your grades.
Yeah, I really I agree with what Glenn have shared earlier. First class, I mean, it's good to have. But I think if I'm not wrong, because I've heard from a few psychologists sharing about this before, they did mention that if you want to enter like a master's program, or I'm not sure about PhD, a master's program, a second upper degree would suffice. Okay, so it don't necessarily need to have like a first class, and like what Glenn mentioned, like it's really important. Depending on what you want, what type of careers you want to get into. Related experience is a lot more important actually. So they ultimately want to know whether you can help them to perform like certain role in their organization. So volunteer opportunities, working with others, networking in these fields is a lot more important compared to the grades. Yeah, so the degree is just a stepping stone for you, essentially. So I hope this helps. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, speakers, for your responses. Now, let's move on to the next question. So this question is a bit more, general and open. So the question is, was it hard for you to study psychology?
Okay. No. Okay. So it was not for me. So when I went to poly, it was a good introduction for me. So because actually poly and uni are quite similar. So I wouldn't say that uni is significantly harder. I'll put that out first. So in poly, I gained quite a bit of experience, so that they helped me a lot when I went to uni, because some of the topics we covered were pretty similar. So I did not really have a hard time studying psych in poly either. I think because I was interested in it. And also, let me say now that if you're talking about psychology, you must break it down into different modules because they're taking different modules, right? And those modules differ on difficulty, especially depending on your interests. So I was very good at social psych and cultural psych mods, so like A+, that kind. But when it came to things like legendary statistics, not so much, and yeah, it really depends on where your interest lies. You'll definitely find yourself more drawn to certain modules. And but that being said, even though you're drawn to certain modules, it doesn't mean you'll be good at it. You need to know what's the right way to study for that certain module. Some modules it's easier to just memorize and regurgitate, but other modules, especially the higher level ones, they require more application. So for example, I actually did a clinical module. So it was on, what's it called? Evidence-based practice in psychology. So how do you apply research methods and clinical methods to treat clients? So that's like clinical psych, right? I was not very good at it. So yeah, I guess it wasn't for me. But yeah, so even though I found it interesting, I wouldn't say that I performed superbly in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are things to keep out for. Katie.
Yeah, indeed, it's very volatile in university. Sometimes when you think that you know the topic really well, it really depends on the cohort as well. So it's hard to say whether you can perform that well in the module or not. But okay, personally, was it difficult studying psychology? I think at the start it was, because I've never been really exposed to any psychology topics or modules, prior to joining university. So during the introduction to psychology, it was quite a lot to take in, I must say, because you're thrown in like so many new concepts and ideas at the same time. It was a lot to take in, but of course, with time, that definitely helps. You start to realize what kind of topics you're interested in. Then subsequently, you can choose modules that are related to what you like. And that helps a lot when you are interested in the topic. Definitely, you will spend more time in it, and it really helps. So I guess I think there are more questions coming up. So I think generally that's how it was for me. But later on, one more thing. As I went to a higher level, it got better. In terms of scoring for the various modules, because I think it's because it's the modules that I actually am interested in. And I thought I would do well in. So that's great. Yeah, so that's generally it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, speakers, for your responses. Very insightful indeed. Now, earlier on, we actually covered in the WooClap that, psychology is actually a social science. So the next question we have coming up is, how important are the different sciences, such as, chemistry, biology, as well as other subjects like A-Math and English? How are they different in psychology? And will one be at a disadvantage if he or she doesn't excel in these areas?
Do you want to start first?
Sure. Okay. So, please, how are the current, basically how are the topics that you guys are currently doing related to psychology, and whether not being as good in one affects the others? I mean, affects you in the future in psychology. Just to clarify.
I think maybe for my side, how different, to answer the question directly, they're all important. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but psychology will tap upon all of these things. Okay, so chemistry and biology, for example, right? You will study it because, for example, chemistry, if we talk about the intersection between the two, it might be like hormones, because hormones are like chemicals, like how your brain communicates internally with each other. And biology is very important because there's a whole subfield called, and there's a whole like fundamental module called biological psychology. So it would be good to have this kind of basic information. Don't, like, after you graduate, don't throw it out of your head, because it will come back to you. But if you have demonstrated the capability and aptitude to study at a university level, the modules will actually give you a good introduction to it again. So I wouldn't worry so much about it. Yeah, it's about of course, you should continue working on those skills, because like for skills like A-Math, okay, A-Math is kind of technical, but you will be doing math again inside. And English is, super important. You should work on your writing and reading skills. Yes.
Yeah, I think additionally, if you're interested in this field called neuroscience, then biology is even more important. That basically talks about how the brain works and things like that. I resonate with what Gwyneth has shared earlier. Writing is important. Math builds a strong foundation for you in terms of statistics in the future. So work hard on all these subjects. Do your best.
Yeah, work hard because it gets harder. Yes. It just gets harder. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, speakers, for your answers. Let's move on to the next question. I think this question is a very interesting question. So the participants would like to know, what is the pay like?
Okay, I have an answer for that, right? Okay, if you want to find out what the general range of pay is, you can go to the Graduate Employment Survey. So the GES, let me see. Can Google. You can go look at, if you Google Graduate Employment Survey, the first thing that comes up is a file by Ministry of Education. You can take a look at that to see under the relevant subject what the range of pay is. That's usually what graduates are getting. Okay, that's it.
I see. Yeah, so like different roles always have different pay, different factors will have different pays as well. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
but yes, it also depends on specialization. Yeah, Katie.
Yeah. I also wanted to share this link. I found this salary guideline for the social service sector, if that is something that you're looking to go into. So they have a very nice table filled with the salary range, etc. And I will share that link in the chat is disabled. Okay. But you can search NCSS, National Council of Social Service, and just search NCSS salary, and then you can see the starting salary range. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the next question will be, how do you source for internships and when do you start? And is volunteering experience important?
How do you search for internships? Okay, so I think in university, that they have a career guidance officer, and I believe that each university also have like a dedicated portal for you to search for related internships. So that's one way you can find it. But of course, you can also look for it on your own via LinkedIn, or Google, or even on like various Telegram group chats that are offering careers or jobs or internships to university students. Yeah, and is volunteering important? I would say it really depends on what you want to go into lah. If you're looking at a role that works with people directly, volunteering, yeah, is very important. And there are many different types of volunteering opportunities. Yeah, so it really depends how you want to shape it, what you want to do. But it definitely serves as like a relevant experience in psychology. Yeah, when you want to apply for jobs in the future, that is something that they will look at as well.
Yes. Okay. Volunteering experience, for the sake of like discussion, I'll define it as anything that's unpaid. So anything that's unpaid is like you could go volunteer in the community, you go volunteering for special projects, or you can even RA, like research work, is also technically unpaid because most of the time it's not paid, right? So I can tell you that you should get an extracurricular activity. So you should not only be studying your whole time in poly or uni. You should go out and do a project that you like. It can be just one thing. So you could join like a CCA and maybe take up a leadership position. That usually helps. Internships, sourcing for it. I mean, usually if you are enrolled in uni or poly, they will send you offers for internships often. But if you want to self-source, that's another thing. Yeah, you might need to do some of your own research for that. And okay, so you can also, there's a lot of like organizations on the ground that you can actually work with. So like personally, it has been like one of my preoccupations to apply as a volunteer at AWARE, Associations for Women's Research, because I think my psychology expertise can be useful there. So I actually got with them on one of their projects, like ad hoc projects, where I interviewed women from low-income families who got grants. So we wanted to find out how grants influence their lives. So that's basically, there's a lot of things that you can do, and I recommend that you do them, like you take up one or two of these projects concurrently with your studies. That will help you to stand out, and make sure that it's relevant to your interest. Yeah, like if you like children, work with children. If you like working with women, because then you do that kind of thing. Yes. Or like if you want to go to the clinical side, you can try applying to a clinic, or like volunteering at a hospital to start off. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your advice. I think this has really been very insightful and it has answered our burning questions. So now we would like to have a group photo session to commemorate the Exploring Psychology event with everyone here. May we invite all of you to turn on your video cameras and smile at the camera.
All right. We will now be assigning each of you to your respective breakout rooms for some fun-filled activities, which I'm sure we have all been waiting for. We hope you make more friends in the breakout rooms and have fun and enjoy, and I hope you learn more about psychology there. All right, breakout rooms, let's go. All right, everyone, please join your breakout rooms now. See y'all.
Okay. Yeah, so welcome back, everybody. I really hope that all of you had fun in the breakout rooms playing the stroke task and the Pictionary game. Yeah, I hope that you guys have learned a few new terms today, maybe something that you've never seen before, and this may spark some interest in you. Like, oh, what exactly? Yeah, so you all learned something new today. Okay, so what is this on the screen? Upcoming events. So SPS Youth Wing, we are always coming up with like new events and content on social media. So the most upcoming, the event that is coming up soon is this thing called the Singapore Register of Psychologists sharing. Okay, so basically what this is about is an event where we will have one of our SPS members, a clinical psychologist, who will be sharing with us how we can become a psychologist in Singapore. So what will be covered will be what exactly is the Singapore Register of Psychologists, SRP? Why is there a need to sign up with them? And of course, what are the benefits of joining this at all? And then last of all, of course, importantly, the speaker will also be sharing tips for students who are planning their educational pathway to gain this SRP accreditation. Okay, so if you're interested in becoming like a psychologist in the future, this is an event that you want to look forward to, and you guys are invited to join us. Yeah, so we will definitely share more about this event on our social media. Okay, next slide. So talking about social media, right? Okay, so do follow us via this link, link3-SPS Youth Wing, where we basically have our Instagram page and also our LinkedIn if you're interested in joining us there. Yeah, so I think the one that will interest you the most should be Instagram, or you can search SPS Youth Wing on Instagram to follow us, and we regularly post content as well, sharing psychology related topics and updates of our events. Yeah, so if you're interested in seeing future events from us, just follow us here, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. Can just flash this for a while for those who wanna join us, follow us. And, yes, thanks Gwen for sharing the link in the chat. Okay, so while you guys are accessing this, I guess I'll hand the time back to our MCs. Thank you all once again for joining our event. Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. So it has truly been a pleasure being with all of you today. Before we end the event, we would like all of you to fill in the feedback form in the chat. Do take note that you only receive your e-certificate of participation when you have submitted the form. Yeah.
And we would like to express our gratitude to all participants for joining us in this exciting event today. Thank you and all the best in your future endeavors.